The Wyoming sun hung low and harsh in the sky, turning the plains into a shimmering sheet of gold and dust. Jake Mallister rode slowly, his mare's hooves dragging through the dry earth, each step tired and heavy. For 3 long years he had lived like this alone, burdened, trapped in a ranch that once held laughter but now carried nothing but ghosts. His fingers brushed the rawhide cord around his neck, the wedding ring tied to it warm against his skin, Sarah's ring. He hadn't taken it off since the day she died. Sometimes he wondered if holding on to her memory was what kept his heart beating, or what kept it from healing. But today wasn't about grief. He was riding to town for supplies he could barely afford, hoping the ranch would make it through another winter. The wind was restless, stirring up dust devils across the empty land, carrying with it the faint smell of smoke. Jake frowned. Smoke meant trouble in these parts. He nudged his mare forward, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. Minutes later, he saw its splintered wagon pieces scattered across the trail like bones after a Volf attack. Charred wood, torn canvas, a wheel still spinning gently in the breeze. Then came the smell, metallic, heavy, blood. Jake slid off his horse, rifle raised. Lord have mercy. 4 bodies lay in the dirt. A man, 2 hired hands, and a woman in traveling clothes, their lifeless faces turned toward the sky. Whoever did this left nothing behind but death. Jake whispered a prayer under his breath. He had seen enough violence on the frontier, but seeing civilians cut down like this, it hardened something inside him. Then a sound, a tiny, trembling gasp, a moan. Jake's head snapped toward the overturned wagon frame. He stepped cautiously, pushing aside broken boards and burned cloth, and there she was. A young woman, half buried beneath debris, her dress torn and dusty, her dark hair tangled around her pale face. Her chest rose unevenly. She was alive barely. Jake knelt. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open, filled with pain and confusion. She recoiled a little when he touched her arm. "Easy," Jake murmured, his voice as soft as he could make it. "You're safe. I'm not here to hurt you." He lifted her gently, giving her water from his canteen. She drank like she hadn't tasted water in days. The bullet graze on her shoulder was shallow but bleeding. Jake tied a clean cloth around it. "What's your name?" he asked. For a moment she hesitated, something flickering in her gaze. "Charlotte," she whispered finally. "Charlotte Ashby." Her voice carried an accent he'd only heard from Eastern travelers, refined, educated, completely out of place on the frontier. Jake studied her torn dress, the fine stitching, the delicate lace. She wasn't a ranch girl. And she certainly wasn't used to hardship. "Miss Charlotte, we need to get you to a doctor," he said. She nodded weakly as he lifted her onto his horse in front of him. They rode for hours toward Medicine Bow Station. Charlotte drifted in and out of consciousness, her head resting against his chest. Every few minutes Jake checked her pulse, whispering reassurance she probably didn't even hear. When they reached the station, Dr. Graham took her immediately, stitching her wound and checking for internal injuries. "She live," the doctor told him. "She's tougher than she looks." Jake stayed beside her bed through the night, watching her breathe, remembering the long nights he'd spent by Sarah's bedside, hoping she would wake. At dawn, Charlotte finally stirred. She blinked at him, confused. "Where am I?" "Medicine Bow," Jake said. "I found you near a wreck." Fear flashed across her face so quick most men would have missed it. Jake didn't. "You're safe now," he added gently. "I'm Jake Mallister." "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't think anyone would come." Something in her voice tugged at Jake's chest, a mix of vulnerability and strength. "Do you have family here?" he asked. "No," she shook her head fast. Too fast. Jake let it go. "You can rest at my ranch until you recover. It's not much, but it's safe." Charlotte hesitated, then nodded. "I would be grateful." The ride to the ranch was quiet. Charlotte stared at the mountains, the vast plains, the wild beauty of Wyoming. Jake could tell she wasn't used to the endless open land. And she definitely wasn't used to the silence, the frontier kind that presses against your thoughts until everything feels louder. "You're far from home," Jake said casually. Charlotte's grip tightened on the saddle horn. "You have no idea." When they reached the ranch, Jake helped her down. She stared at the house-worn, weather-beaten, but standing strong. "It's peaceful," she murmured. Jake led her inside, showing her Sarah's old room. "This belonged to my wife," he said softly. "She passed 3 years ago. You're welcome to stay until you're strong enough to travel." Charlotte touched the quilt folded on the bed, her eyes softening. "Thank you, Jake. This is more kindness than I've known in a long time." Jake managed a small smile. He hadn't heard anyone say his name with gratitude in ages. That evening, Jake made stew while Charlotte rested. As he waited for the broth to boil, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something he'd taken from the wreckage, a small cameo lying half buried in the dirt. The crest on it gleamed faintly. Harrington, not Ashby. Jake frowned. He turned it over, noticing the delicate engraving, the expensive craftsmanship. This belonged to someone important, someone wealthy. Why would Charlotte lie about her name? He tucked it back into his shirt. Later that night, Charlotte appeared in the doorway, wrapped in a shawl. "You look worried," she said gently. Jake sighed. "I found something near the wagon." A cameo with a Harrington crest. Her face went pale. Jake waited patiently. Finally, she spoke. "My real name is Charlotte Harrington," she admitted. "My mother is the Duchess of Warrington. We were traveling west under false names. Someone must have known." Jake stared at her. A duchess's daughter here on his failing ranch. It sounded like a plot in a dime novel. "But why lie?" he asked. Charlotte's eyes shone with unshed tears. "Because if the wrong people knew who I was, I wouldn't make it out alive." Jake's jaw tightened. "Well, you're safe here, and your secret stays between us." Relief flooded her face. "Thank you." Days passed. Charlotte healed slowly. She insisted on helping around the ranch, feeding chickens, sweeping the porch, even attempting to cook despite clearly never having cooked before. Jake tried not to laugh when she burned biscuits to blacken stones. She glared playfully. "It's not funny. It wasn't laughing," Jake said, hiding a smile. A strange warmth grew between them, a comfort. Jake hadn't felt since Sarah. Charlotte brought life back into the old house without trying. And Jake found himself looking forward to hearing her voice each morning. But peace never lasted long in Wyoming. One afternoon, Sheriff Bailey arrived. He tipped his hat. "Heard you found a survivor of that wagon mess." Charlotte stiffened. Jake stepped forward. "She's still recovering." "Don't want to trouble her." The sheriff studied Charlotte carefully when she came to the porch. Her posture, her refined manner, everything about her hinted at high birth, even without fine clothes. "Where you headed before the trouble?" the sheriff asked. Charlotte replied cautiously, "To a friend's family in the West." Her polished tone didn't match the dusty frontier at all. The sheriff noticed. Jake could tell. "Well," Bailey said slowly, "if you remember anything useful, you let me know." When he rode off, Charlotte exhaled shakily. "I think he suspects something," she whispered. "Maybe," Jake said, "but he ain't got proof." "We'll be careful." Charlotte looked at him with trust so deep it made Jake's heart ache. "You saved my life," she said. "I don't know how to repay that. You're alive," Jake answered. That's enough. Neither of them knew danger still hunted her. That the men who attacked the wagon weren't finished. That the frontier had a harsh way of pulling people into storms they never asked for. And neither knew how the bond between a grieving rancher and a runaway noblewoman would grow into something fierce, fragile, and life-changing. But the wind over Wyoming carried it, the feeling that their story had only just begun. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our channel for more stories like this.